Hello, I'm Alisa Stovall, a consultant with the Indiana IEP Resource Center. For today's essential elements, I would like to explore the topic of setting up for success the classroom environment for addressing student behavior. As our schools are becoming more inclusive, students arrive with a broader range of academic skills and needs. This is also true for the behavioral skills and needs students bring to school each day. It's important that all school staff continue to build their own skill set in proactively addressing student behaviors. While it may seem like dealing with behavior comes easily to some individuals, addressing student behavior is a skill that all of us can learn and get better at. There are strategies and skills we can develop that allow us to set students up for academic and behavioral success. Before we begin, here are 4 things to keep in mind when dealing with behavior. First, there's no one answer or strategy that will make everything all better. Evidence-based practice or not, no strategy works for all behavior or every student. Consider for a moment the multiple strategies that help children learn academic skills in reading or math. Learning behavior appropriate for a specific setting or context is no different. Second, be patient. Give strategies time. All behavior is communicating something, and often it takes time to decipher the message. Behavior is context-bound. Some behaviors are okay in one setting, but inappropriate in another setting. Even in the most supportive settings, learning a new behavior and becoming proficient in using it takes time. Third, don't take a student's behavior personally. Very rarely is it about you. Fourth, there are 3 opportunities to address a student's behavior: before the behavior happens, while the behavior is happening, and after the behavior has happened. To set students up for success, the most powerful and effective opportunity we have comes before the behavior happens. Here are several proactive strategies you can use to increase the probability of positive student behavior occurring in your classrooms and buildings. A proactive way to minimize behavior problems is to start by thinking about the types of instructional activities that will take place in your classroom or area, and purposefully arrange furniture and materials. Consider the following list of instructional activities. How will your classroom be used differently for each one? Small group, large group, panel discussions, role play, individual presentations or speeches, learning center, or technology stations, individual study, student and teacher conferencing. As you plan your lessons and activities, pre-plan the settings that best support those learning objectives. Create several classroom design setups and have them on hand for times when your instructional activity needs a different room arrangement. Online tools and print resources are available to help you design classroom spaces. For example, Classroom Architect from 4teachers.org or Scholastic's Class Setup. These tools and a few others are noted in the resource document available with this video. Regardless of the instructional activities, as you design your room setup, the arrangement should allow teacher access to students, student collaboration, clear paths for student movement, and a clear line of sight of all students. The success of a learning activity can be impacted by students being too close together or too far apart from each other. As you develop your room setup, think about potential roadblocks or barriers. For example, avoid putting the route to your technology storage beside an easily distracted student. Or, if there's students who regularly use assistive technology for learning, have multiple tech tools available for any student's use to remove the stigma a single student might feel. Instructional materials are another component of your classroom design. Be intentional about where materials are placed in the learning environment. 1. Use orderly placement. A disorganized room or workspace can make it hard for some students. They can be drawn off task or don't know what to attend to and what to filter out as unimportant. Remember, preventing students from getting off task is easier than trying to pull a distracted student back to a task. Orderly placement of materials is also a model for students that struggle with organization of their desk and belongings. Number 2, use predictable placement. It makes sense to have the hand soap and paper towels at the sink where hands are washed. It makes sense to have the math manipulatives or grid paper in the drawers beside the math lab tables. Students have all the materials for their work on hand. Where materials are located in the classroom supports the routine of sameness of a task. It supports independence, especially if students know the procedures for using the materials. Number 3, have available materials for the current task only. This helps students organize their workspace and their preparation for the next task. This can also prevent clutter. It can support a clear ending to a work period. When we're finished solving the math equations, we put away the graphing calculators. This can help create a smoother transition to a new activity. Number 4, explain posted anchor charts and maps, pictures, and posters. When these powerful teaching tools are mounted on walls and bulletin boards, explain their presence and relevance to your students and the work that they will be doing. Reference these visuals during activities or student work. Post in English and other languages spoken in your classroom to reinforce an inclusive environment. Brain research tells us that even after the posters are removed from the walls, if referenced regularly, students can look at that blank wall and see the information. Whether it's their first day of kindergarten or 50th day of their sophomore year, students need to know the expectations of their school and classes. Routines, also known as procedures, establish predictable patterns and promote clear expectations. Be careful of assuming students know what to do. Teach them what you expect in your setting. Be explicit. There may be similar expectations in other classes. However, they aren't all carried out in the same way. For example, turning in finished work in one class may be placing papers in a tray on the teacher's desk. Turning in work in another classroom may be electronically uploading the document into a folder on the teacher's website. Students need to know how to turn in their work for your classroom. To develop your procedures, determine what you expect students to do. Describe those expectations in observable and measurable terms. Make sure the expectation is clear, stated positively, and always applicable to your setting and situation. Teach the procedures using examples and non-examples. Give students opportunities to practice and to receive feedback. For those needing prompts or reminders, ask a student to give the class a quick review of the procedures prior to the group transition or activity. You may want to reinforce the information with visuals or gestures, and don't be afraid to use music or other sounds to signal transition time. Here are exemplars for procedures to consider for your building or classroom: arrival and dismissal, transition times, getting help, what to do when work is completed, storing personal belongings, handing out materials, making up missed work, moving through the hallways, waiting in line for lunch, joining an activity after it has started, using hall passes, arriving to school late, arriving to class late, entering, exiting the student parking lot, rearranging the room for group work or a panel discussion. Are there any here you've never considered before? Consider involving students in defining expectations and obtain student commitment to support them. Procedures may start out as a teacher expectation. However, when explained, rehearsed, and reinforced, they quickly become our procedures, promoting student self-management and a sense of community. Procedures help students understand exactly what is expected of them in the context of your class activities. They can promote both emotional and mental safety. Another benefit of well-taught procedures is the hours of time on task that is gained throughout the year. Taking time to plan for expectations and routines for your classroom is one more way of setting up your students for behavioral success. At some point, we've all been responsible for supervising students in our buildings and classrooms. How we supervise is what sets up students for behavioral success. Supervising is made up of 3 components: scanning, moving, and interacting. Scanning is being visually aware of both students and the environment. Staff can watch for potential problem spots and take advantage of opportunities to pre-correct behavior. Pre-correcting is giving students a prompt or reminder about a specific skill just before the student performs the skill to prevent student error. For example, as students begin to enter the building from lunch break, the supervisor says, "Okay, group, we're heading back into the building. Remember to walk down the hallway without talking to keep from interrupting the students already in class. Thanks for respecting the work time for the 8th graders." Scanning allows proactive engagement with students. Second, moving or working the crowd is supervising by continuous motion. This allows staff members to interact with students utilizing proximity. The goal is not to move around as if on patrol, but to use the opportunity to connect and be present with students. Moving creates opportunities for the adult to use pre-correction and to engage with students. The presence of one responsible adult can change an environment. The third activity of supervising is interacting. Interacting is making the opportunity to build relationships with students. It is verbal communication in a respectful manner and tone, especially pre-correction. It's not just words, but use of nonverbals such as a handshake or a nod or a gesture. Look for opportunities to give students non-contingent attention, like making genuine conversation. Develop the habit of giving student-specific feedback. Instead of saying, "Good job," saying, "Great, you have the first 3 steps of the problem done correctly. Now what's the final step?" Interacting is about making connections with students. Don't be afraid to be wrong or not know the answer to a question. Students see you as real and it builds trust. These 3 evidence-based strategies, classroom design, procedures, and supervision, appear quite basic. However, when used consistently, these practices can change student behavior. We encourage you to embed these practices into your classroom and experience the positive effect on your students. For more information on the preventative strategies referenced today, see Supporting and Responding to Behavior, Evidence-Based Classroom Strategies for Teachers, a document created by pbis.org. For classroom design resources, teachers.org Classroom Architect, Scholastic, the Library Store, and 10 Quick Verbal Interventions That Can Prevent Behavioral Problems by Bev Johns. If you have questions about this information or any other topic, connect with us on the Indiana IEPRC website, indianaieprc.org.